For our final project, we chose to look at the precious metals gold, silver, and copper. For our case studies, I tried to choose artifacts that maybe did not show the best technical use of the materials, but really reflect the value and significance we've placed in these materials cross-culturally. Gold in particular is one of the most difficult to pinpoint. I think it would be impossible to choose one artifact that really exemplifies goldsmithing at its best. There's really never been a material that has fascinated humans as much as gold. We've saved it for our most wealthy, our most powerful, and our most divine, most importantly. And because of this, there's really a sort of reverence that goes alongside gold. And so I chose the Dome of the Rock, not because it is the best technical use of gold, but because the value that has been placed in this physical location in this temple, I think pays homage to how important gold is as a material for us as a species. So this temple, this iteration of it, was completed in the late 7th century, around 692, and it's located in Jerusalem. As you can see from the lower picture, it occupies one of the higher points of elevation in Jerusalem, so it's visible to the surrounding city, and I think that's really important, especially with that gold dome and how that substance really captures and reflects the light in such a way that it doesn't give our eyes but a choice to look at it. The physical space, the temple base, so to speak, was credited to have been the location for the first temple, or the Temple of Solomon, which is the same location supposedly as the foundation stone, which is where God created the world, and then Adam, and also where God tested Abraham with his son Isaac. And the dome, and this space in particular, uh, this iteration of the temple, it's not a mosque, but this Islamic temple was meant to commemorate Muhammad's night journey, or the Miraj. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of classic Islamic decoration. It's mostly an iconic. If there is form, it would be in vegetal shapes, but there's calligraphy scrolling around the entire building, that as well as inside, and the inside and outside are decorated with these really beautiful mosaics, as well as additional gold leaf and precious jewels adorning the interior. So like I said, nothing really has captured our attention as much as gold, and there's this connotation of divinity and wealth and light and how these all interact. And I think this the way that this temple occupies the cityscape is reminiscent of the Great Pyramids of Egypt, and how these pyramids also would have had a gold top encapsulating their forms that would have brought attention to it from anyone in the area. If the sun was hitting it, it would have been very noticeable, and brought attention to the power of the pharaohs buried in the pyramids, as well as this location in Jerusalem, which has such deep history and value for all three of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For silver, I chose the Mildenhall treasure, a silver hoard that was located or discovered in Mildenhall, Suffolk, England in 1942, but the treasure itself is a Roman treasure dated to the 4th century from the Roman occupation of Great Britain. The treasure itself is unlikely to have been a cohesive set. The technical and stylistic discrepancies indicate that they were just individual pieces collected, probably by one wealthy family. This also supported by the nature of how they were discovered. They most likely would have been stashed in the face of an emergency, and the family didn't want it to fall into enemy hands. And I think that in particular is representative of silver, especially in Western culture. It certainly is very precious and reserved for the wealthy and the powerful, and it is used in, or has been used in, religious icons and for religious artifacts, but there's more of a secular connotation to silver than with gold. Often it's more accessible, so the less powerful would have had access to silver, and it's often more representative of personal wealth rather than political or divine wealth. The dimensions listed here are from the British Museum, and I also note the percentage of silver is at 95.3%, which is incredibly pure, and I think is a testimony to how the quality of Roman craftsmanship. The platter itself is decorated on the outer ring with the god Bacchus, and he has his customary dancing satyrs around him, as well as the god Pan is present, and Heracles is seen with his lion skin. And they're all playing instruments or dancing or drinking, uh, engaging in revelry. The inner ring shows Neptune's some combination of servants, daughters, and wives, the Nereids, and then the inner ring has Neptune himself. And so Bacchus, Pan, and Neptune in particular, these gods were popular enough and represented enough of power and wealth that there's a connotation already there just from their presence on the plate, but also the kind of seductive nature of the women dancing. Everyone would have been drinking heavily, given Bacchus or the Dionysus character here, that it would have, to anyone eating or off this plate or being near this platter, it would have kind of connoted wealth and decadence in favor of the owner. So anyone who owns this would have kind of had the same power and wealth that the platter displays. And finally, we have the Riace warriors. Here I've shown the first one, Bronze A, the more youthful of the two figures. It's dated from around 450 BCE. It was discovered off the coast of Riace, Italy in 1972, so very recent find comparatively. You can see that this form, but both of them are in just really incredible condition. They're preserved by the water, which is so lucky, especially since they were used or created with the lost wax technique. They're bronze casts, as we see, and they are in the early classical style, so kind of transitioning from the marble unit with the chorus. These figures have beginning contrapposto, but it's still not quite as expressive as late classical Greek sculpture, but really starting to become a little bit more experimental with form. So you can see this figure probably would have been holding a spear or some sort of weapon, given how his hands are placed. Like I said, he's got the beginning of the contrapposto, the legs are separated, there's a little bit of curvature of the hip, the shoulders are slightly arched. It's especially noticeable the view of the back. And this is not a close-up shot, but you can see the incredible detail that was able to be achieved in the hair, especially in the muscular system. Bronze is much more, or copper and bronze, or thereby bronze, is much more accessible than silver and gold. And with the Bronze Age, bronze became symbolic of power. If you were able to have more durable weapons, you were able to conquer those around you and therefore accrue their riches and become more powerful. So bronze really is emblematic of this era, or the Bronze Age, and I think ties into the Greek culture centered around masculinity and this idea of the warrior. And so these figures in particular are a synthesis of this cultural obsession with masculinity and the male form in particular, with the material that allowed them this power and this wealth. So without bronze, we would not have had the rise of Greek and Roman culture as we did. And I think these bronzes in particular are very good synthesis of this appreciation for the material itself. Bronze would have been the primary material for this type of figural sculpture at the time. Would have the use of marble, as we learned, usually came later. Bronze was the primary material. And I think this sculpture in particular really captures that the energy and that reverence for the male form as well as the material itself. You can see just remarkable detail and realism that was able to be achieved.